up. Oil continues to retreat from multi-month highs. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.3%, down 10. Dow's down 0.3%, down 94, and the Nasdaq's down 0.1%, down 12. The 10-year's little changed with a yield of 1.80. West Texas Intermediate crude's down 0.8% at 62.73 a barrel, while COMEX gold is up 0.2% at 15.7160 an ounce. The dollar yen 108.51, the euro $1.1142, and the British pound $1.3116. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It's 10:34 on Wall Street. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We welcome Jim Bianco, president and founder of Bianco Research. He is based in Chicago. Interesting, Jim, to get your thoughts just kind of on the last few days, the reemergence, if you will, of geopolitical risk coming out of the Mideast. How does that kind of fit into kind of how you're thinking about the markets for 2020?
You know, the thing about it is everybody's wondering, when is the next recession going to occur? Because it's been 11 years since we've had one, and it's the longest period that we've ever had. And I've been arguing that the natural state of an economy is to expand. It will expand forever and ever, but it never does because something comes along and breaks it. And the leading cause over the last many decades of breaking an economy in a recession has been a spike in energy prices. So when you get these events that you've had in the Middle East over the last week or so, you start to wonder if history is going to repeat itself again. Are we going to have a spike in energy prices, and will that bring down the economy like it has so many times before? And I'll remind you that in 2008, we did get to $147 on West Texas Intermediate by June of 2008. So there was a spike of energy prices then as well, too.
A lot of people are expecting that the next move for the Federal Reserve will be lower, that the Fed will cut once more this year. That's what's being priced into the rates market. I'm wondering, do you think that that is required in order to keep the economy going, or do you think that the Fed should cut more or not cut at all?
I do lean towards the Fed cutting. I think that they will cut one more time, and if I had to put a bias on that, I think that the bias would be that they would cut more than once. And I think they would probably do it in the first half of the year. They will definitely, once we get into the second half of the year, try and sit on their hands because of the election. But history shows sometimes they're forced to move an election right before elections. Remember 2008 when they did some of the most extraordinary things they've done in their history, literally days before the election. I do think, though, that if you look at the shape of the yield curve, it is back and positive, but at only 26 basis points. It is well below its long-term average, which would be about 120 basis points. And it is telling us, I've always looked at the yield curve as being something very simple, is that when the yield curve is inverted or very flat, it's a market signal that maybe the funds rate or the policy rate is too high, especially when it's inverted and even when it's very flat. And I would call 26 basis points where we are now flat. So I think that there's going to be downward pressure on interest rates. And the lack of inflation, the thing that the Fed has been scratching their head about, should be embraced by them and say, look, there isn't any. There's room for us to lower interest rates. And I think they'll eventually come to that view.
Jim, do we still need to worry about that short end of the curve, the repo market? That was obviously much in the news several months ago. A little bit less so today?
Yeah, no, I definitely think we should worry about it. It has been drugged into submission by the Fed. They've just buried it with supply. They've supplied repo to the tunes of hundreds of billions of dollars and bought another hundreds of billions of dollars of bills to keep the market quiet. All right, it's quiet. It's not a problem. It's not an immediate worry today, tomorrow, or next week. But what is most concerning is I don't hear a plan from them on how to fix this. I don't hear a plan for them on how to get out of this other than that they just keep throwing the junkie a dime bag every week and saying, here, we'll get you to next week, we'll get you to next week, that being just more repo supply every week. That's not a long-term fix. It's been 4 months. It's time for them to kind of step up to the plate and say, okay, here's how we're going to fix this problem. I might add, I think I know why. I think they know that the reason is that they've overregulated the short end of the yield curve. It has not been able to come to grips with that regulation. They need to back off that regulation. But they've been getting pressure from no less than Liz Warren, Sheila Bair, former FDIC head, Alan Bleiner, former vice chairman of the Fed, saying don't back off on the regulations. Okay, if you don't do that, there's no way to fix this problem.
Right.
And that's why I think they're kind of stuck right now.
You've got a way with words, Jim Bianco. Throwing the junkie a dime bag. Love speaking with you. Jim Bianco, always a pleasure. President and founder of Bianco Research and a Bloomberg Opinion contributor joining us from Chicago. And actually interesting to see that today the repo operation operated by the New York Federal Reserve was oversubscribed for the first time in a couple of the operations. So showing ongoing demand for this liquidity at a time when there are a lot of questions about the repo operations. Right now, let's head down to 991 Studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager there with World and National Headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo continues to defend President Trump's decision to kill Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in a Baghdad drone strike last week. At a State Department news conference you just heard moments ago here on Bloomberg Radio, Pompeo said Iran has been the destabilizing force in the Middle East, including in Afghanistan.
Iran has refused to join the regional and international consensus for peace, and is, in fact, today, actively working to undermine the peace process by continuing its long global efforts to support militant groups there.
More from Bloomberg's David Weiner.
He's responding to this sort of lingering question that many people have. What is the U.S. strategy in the Middle East? What is the U.S. strategy in Iran specifically? And I think what he's trying to say is this, this is tethered to a strategy. This is part of business as usual for us.
In response, Iran says it has been looking at 13 scenarios for possible retaliation. Congress returns from its holiday break today. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi returns to a decision on when or whether to send articles of impeachment to the Senate. Democrats want assurances the Senate will call witnesses and allow documents. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton has said he would testify if subpoenaed. The governor of Puerto Rico has declared a state of emergency as more than a week of earthquakes shakes at its strongest level yet. A magnitude 6.4 struck off the island's southwest coast this morning, followed by a 6.0 aftershock 3 hours later. The shakings led to at least one death, widespread outages, and toppled a famed natural stone arch. Global news on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league. Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Along the goal line, Martin scores! And takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, and a shot, they score!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Hello, I'm Nat Coombs from ESPN's The Nat Coombs Show, which admittedly is 1 out of 10 for original podcast name, but 10 out of 10 for NFL chat. Every week, we're dropping 4 episodes with an all-pro lineup of terrific guests, journalists, comedians, players, coaches, you name it, all getting you up to speed with everything gridiron. The Nat Coombs Show, American football, British accent. Add to your favorites and listen on TuneIn.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
The S&P appears to be destined for its second drop in 3 sessions, with investors cautious after Iran threatened a military response to the U.S. airstrike that killed their top general 4 days ago. The CBOE Volatility Index is up above 14 as geopolitics dominates sentiment. We check the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.2%, down 7. Dow's down 0.25%, down 70. And the NASDAQ is little changed, down 1. The 10-year is down 1/32. The yield is 1.81%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down 0.9% at 62.68 a barrel, while COMEX gold is up less than 0.1% at 15.70 per ounce. The dollar yen 108.58. The euro $1.1137, and the British pound $1.3111. U.S. trade gap narrowed in November to the smallest in 3 years as exports advanced a bit of thaw in the trade war with China, while imports fell to the lowest since 2017. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Bloomberg Markets is brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the sixth straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. We're looking at oil here today. Brent crude and WTI down just about 1% today. They certainly rallied a little bit off of the geopolitical uncertainty over the last several days, but perhaps not as much as traders initially would have thought. We're going to get the latest from Wells Fitzpatrick. Wells is a managing director, equity research, covering all things exploration and production for SunTrust. Robinson Humphreys, based in Houston, Texas. Wells, thanks so much for joining us. So give us a sense of how your stocks, the E&P stocks, kind of have been reacting over the last several days to what appears to be a little bit more volatile energy space.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. As you said, prices have jumped, but only about $2. That's a relatively modest move. That tells you that the market isn't pricing in any sort of crisis-related outages. And, of course, without those crisis-related outages, we're going to be in this kind of 55 to 65 range. That being said, what the heightened tension does is it firms us up at the top end of that range, which is massively important for the group. I mean, the difference between $55 and $65 on WTI is the difference between 2 times debt to EBITDA and 1.5, or it's the difference between being free cash flow neutral and having a 7% free cash flow yield for the group. So even though we haven't seen a big move from the recent escalation, it's good to have us firm up in the upper end of that range, and that should be able to carry on to a pretty positive 2020 for the names.
One interesting development over the past week or so has been the dramatic outperformance of shale companies versus the major oil producers. And I'm wondering whether they are taking advantage of this pop in oil prices to extend their credit lines with banks, to borrow more money, basically to push out any kind of financing gaps in order to prevent or immunize themselves against a drop in the value of oil.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and we'll certainly see it help them in revolver redeterminations in the first quarter here. For a lot of these guys, that's going to be very important. You bring up a good point, because some of the higher debt load guys, I'd point to maybe an extraction, maybe a whiting. That move from 65 to 65 to 65, takes them from 3 times to 2 times debt to EBITDA. So it's a heck of a lifeline for these guys. As far as refinancing, the bond market still seems a little bit cold on the names, but of course that can turn pretty quickly if we stay up in this range and the companies throw off the metrics that should allow them to.
Well, if oil does stay up in this higher range and that helps the balance sheets, do you expect to see a pickup in consolidation activity in your space in 2020, or do you think a lot of the bigger players might sit on the sidelines?
It really depends on how the stocks respond. I think that given what we've seen of consolidation, it's more often, I don't want to say forced, but, the companies being consolidated don't always have the strongest hand. And in so much as a higher oil price will strengthen these companies, I mean, just looking at the 45 companies that we follow, it adds over $10 billion in EBITDA. So they'll have stronger hands, and they'll be able to maybe defend against that a little bit better. The go-it-alone strategy will look a little bit better. So I wouldn't expect it to accelerate that trend with the majors coming in. And the other thing worth pointing out is at this point, the majors have a heck of a lot of shale, especially in the Permian Basin, which, as you all know, is the favorite basin right now. So there's not necessarily a burning desire for them to get anything unless it is quasi-distressed. And, of course, this turns that around a little bit.
I'm wondering if you could zoom out and give us a sense of how long-lasting you think this pop in oil prices is, and whether it has more legs in terms of upside. I mean, do you think that barring some further escalation, oil prices can stay where they are, or do you think that the pressure is lower, frankly?
I think they could stay where they are, and I think that they can go higher. I mean, I understand that it's been 3 or 4 days since the attack, and so it seems as though there's a calm. But what's worth remembering is that the Supreme Leader declared 3 days of mourning, and the likelihood of them attacking during that 3 days was pretty small. Now that 3 days is coming to an end, so the next 24 to 48 hours are going to be very important for the oil markets. And Iran has made it very clear that the military option is still on the table. Really, the first time that would have come to fruition is today. So it's worth keeping a close eye on. If you want to look at it from sort of a short, medium, and long-term effects, from a short term, we got the pop in crude. Another thing that we got about that people don't talk quite as much about is we got a premium in the U.S. contract. So the U.S. gained about $2 in the immediate aftermath of the attack versus Arab Light. And then, of course, Iran abandoned the nuclear deal. So more international pressure could take another 300,000 barrels out of their exports, which would take it to zero. And most importantly, and I think some people miss this, is that the other thing that this does is that if a Democrat wins in 2020, this makes it so much harder to find a detente with Iran. And that was the nightmare scenario, was that in 2021 you have a detente and 1 to 2 million barrels of Iranian crude come back into the market. This makes that a vanishingly small chance of happening, and of course underpins a more bullish longer-term view on crude.
Hey, Wells, what are the companies that you cover doing in terms of production as you look forward to 2020? Are they taking advantage of some higher prices here?
Well, actually, it's been a little bit of a shift. As you know, the sector's a touch out of favor, to say it nicely, and the companies have been moving towards free cash flow, buybacks, et cetera, which is why that range of 55 to 65. It's so important to be in the top end of that range when you're throwing off high single-digit free cash flow yields, and you can actually deliver. On that. But in general, the growth rate in the U.S. has really, really slowed. Oil or gas, for example, the EIA predicts that gas production will be flat December to December, which is really remarkable coming off the growth that we've seen. Oil will be up, but it'll be up a lot more modestly. You're talking December to December of something like 400,000 versus, prior years you were north of 1 million. So you have a pretty dramatic pullback, and I think that the incremental cash that will come in the door from this higher price will likely be used to fuel those buybacks, those debt repurchases, et cetera, to really fix the financial situation versus putting more holes in the ground.
Wells Fitzpatrick, thank you so much for being with us. Wells Fitzpatrick, Managing Director, focused on energy and research and E&P sector generally at SunTrust Robinson Humphrey. And I got to say, right now we're seeing oil down the most in about 2 weeks with a decline of 1.1%. That said, the gain that we have seen at the start of this year has led to a significant outperformance by U.S. energy junk bonds, which have gained more than 1% in just a couple trading sessions versus 0.2% for the broader high yield bond index. So you can really see those shale players getting a bump from the increase that we've seen so far. I'm Lisa Abramowitz, along with my co-host and colleague Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Sometimes
boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it up. Add a boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing in January. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
Do you remember? Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 500-gram tub of Anchor Salted Spreadable from £3.50 to just £2. All this week at Tesco.
Selected largest stores subject to availability. Offer ends 14th of January.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Hear every play of the NFL playoffs live with the NFL on TuneIn Premium. The divisional round kicks off Saturday at 4:35 p.m. Eastern when the Vikings travel cross country to take on the 49ers in an NFC showdown in Santa Clara. The action continues at 8:15 as the Ravens host the Tennessee Titans in Baltimore. On Sunday, listen live beginning at 3:05 Eastern as the Texans and Chiefs square off in Kansas City, followed by the Seahawks and Packers at 6:40 in Green Bay. The excitement of the NFL playoffs is on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still in that mode where we're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at Treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
If your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, we're going to get the latest on the Treasury market. How is it responding to a market in which geopolitical risk is reappearing? Plus, we're going to get the latest from the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas from our own John Butler. Let's see if he's actually up or down so far. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
I think, Paul, the stocks are down, but not by as much as they were just a few minutes ago. Investors are wary of an escalation of tensions with Iran, and they're also looking at the economy. John Norman, J.P. Morgan, tells Bloomberg they see a 1.5% or 2% economy over the next year.
Slowing because some of the fiscal impulse of the past couple of years is not going to be present in 2020, but you're getting a lift from policy easing both inside the U.S. and outside the U.S. So I think it's kind of a low-drama economy for the next year. If you want to be a significant bear on the U.S. economy, I think you need to put a lot more weight on the fiscal drag, or you need to believe that policy stimulus over the past year just doesn't matter.
Check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P is now down only 0.1%, down 3. The Dow's down 0.1%, down 36. And the NASDAQ is up 0.1%, up 12. The 10-year is little changed with a yield of 1.80%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down over 1% now at 62.61 a barrel, while COMEX gold's up 0.1% at 15.70.40 an ounce. The dollar yen 108.62. The euro $1.1141, and the British pound $1.3119. Gas stations around the U.S. are rushing to upgrade fuel pumps to accept credit card and debit cards with chips, as Visa and MasterCard rejected a request to delay in looming deadline to complete the work beginning in October. Station operators that haven't modernized their pumps will face liability for any card fraud that happens at their businesses. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues now with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Thank you so much, Greg Jarrett. Let's take a look at small and mid-cap shares, which are also searching for direction on this day when people are assessing a potential risk from escalations in the Mideast. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks Editor, joining us here. Dave.
Well, the smaller companies kind of rebounded like the larger ones have to some extent. The Russell 2000 index was down as much as 0.6% in early trading. Now it's lower by less than 0.1%, and so is the S&P 500. So not much direction at the moment for sure. One of the steepest drops in the Russell, though, belongs to Clovis Oncology, whose ticker is CLVS. The maker of cancer treatments has lost 9.8%. Preliminary fourth quarter sales for the drug Rubraca failed to meet analyst average estimate in the Bloomberg survey. The Mirati Therapeutics, ticker MRTS, is down, MRTX, let's be precise there, is down 8.2%. Chief Financial Officer Jamie Donadio and Chief Business Officer Chris Lemasters left the cancer drug developer. Mirati brought in a Chief Operating Officer and a Chief Commercial Officer. Now, the Russell's biggest gain belongs to Apellis Pharmaceuticals, ticker APLS. It's up 22%. A proposed treatment for a rare form of anemia worked better than a drug from Alexion Pharmaceuticals in a final stage study. And Time Technologies, ticker TYME, has risen almost 15%. The drug developer agreed to work on cancer treatments with Eagle Pharmaceuticals. Terms of the deal call for Time to receive as much as $40 million, including an initial $20 million investment. You know, Eagle's ticker is EGRX, and it's also in the Russell. It's down 0.8%.
Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Recently, Fed Chairman Powell commented that it would take a material change in the outlook for the Federal Reserve to raise or lower interest rates. I think some Treasury traders are wondering if rising Mideast tensions could, in fact, be a material change in the outlook. We put that question to our good friend Ira Jersey, Chief U.S. Interest Rate Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us on the phone. Ira, thanks so much for joining us. How do you think the Fed is kind of factoring into its calculus what appears to be a significant escalation in Mideast tensions?
Yeah, so I think that they'll end up looking at things like a lot of the survey data that will kind of react a little bit faster than some of the hard data that we'll get on things like retail sales and the like. Primarily because it's just again another increase in uncertainty, and we know that that consumers and in particular businesses don't like uncertainty. So as the probability for conflict goes up, then economic projections probably have to be driven down a little bit, and the Fed will take that into account. But I do think that the hurdle is pretty high for them to change their policy stance at this point, because as Jay Powell and every other central banker around the world says, policy works at long and variable lags. So they're still waiting to see what the impact of their cuts in 2019 do for the economy in the first half of this year.
I'm wondering what you make of the flattening yield curve. As we have seen tensions rise, we have seen the yield curve flatten just a touch in the U.S., and I'm wondering if that's an expression of traders not having faith that the Fed will act quickly enough in response to some sort of geopolitical escalation.
Yeah, no, I think it has more to do with the fact that the front end is kind of pinned, because if the market's expectation right now is more or less for the Federal Reserve to be on hold for the rest of the year. So because of that, the thing that moves the curve around is the longer end of the curve moving up and down. And what we've had so far this year is a flight to quality bid into 10-year and 30-year treasuries. So you've seen curves flatten in a bull fashion, primarily because of the long end rallying. So and I think that's the primary thing that I think is going to continue is you'll see bull flattening and bear steepening. So basically the curve will be directional with the market. We've seen that basically since last June, and I think that's likely to persist throughout most of this year, at least through the election, when we can reevaluate, and when the market will probably reevaluate what the assessment for the economy is going forward.
Hey, Ira, could you give us an update on what the Fed is thinking about the short end of the curve, that repo market? Obviously, it was newsworthy several months ago. We haven't heard much about it recently. Are they content with kind of the status quo?
I don't think they are. I think that they have the tools that they need in order to keep the repo markets, the front-end funding markets of the Treasury and agency mortgage market contained, and not to have it become a systemic problem for markets or the economy. But I do think that they want to have some kind of open-ended facility where they don't have to guess about the amount that markets want and do open market operations every day. So instead, have some kind of facility where if people need reserves, they can go get them on an overnight basis. The problem with that is, how do you design that, and where banks and dealers don't have stigma going to it, where people say, oh, we shouldn't do business with XYZ Bank because they've gone to the facility, so they must have liquidity problems. That's the problem that they're going to have. So the design of this new facility is going to be very important, but I do think that they're thinking about it. We had on Bloomberg Radio and Television position. We had Loretta Mester, one of the Fed presidents, even say like she would be in favor of that, but it didn't sound like it's going to be announced in January, so we might have to wait maybe a little bit longer into the year before that program is actually started.
Ira, just real quick here, I've spoken with a lot of strategists who say the reason why there has been such muted price action is because of Fed liquidity. Do you buy that?
I think that's part of it. I think just the idea that the Federal Reserve is going to be in the market, the fact that they're buying a lot of Treasury bills right now, they're actually buying things that are cheap on the curve. So when they reinvest their mortgage-backed securities that are running off, they're buying Treasuries, and they're buying those Treasuries that are cheap. So relative to the other ones around it. So I do think that some of the volatility or lack of volatility in the market is stemming from that. It's also the fact that the Fed's on hold, and if the Fed's on hold, there's not a lot of reason, and the economy hasn't changed very much. There's not a lot of reason for the market to move much.
Ira Jersey, thank you so much for being with us. Ira Jersey is Chief U.S. Interest Rate Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence, talking about all things Fed and rates. And I got to say, this really has been the main theme that I've heard out of so many people. Yeah, things aren't moving around that much in response to growing tensions. It's the Fed.
Right.
100%.
And the Fed got the credit for pushing the markets up in 2019. Now I guess they're getting some credit for just kind of calming the markets here.
I just wonder how much more ammunition they have. I don't know. This still, to me, is a big question. A lot of people saying if they do a sort of insurance cut like they did last year, it can boost the markets further. I just wonder about that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I agree with you.
All right, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager's there with world and national headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, the Trump administration continues to make the case it made the right call in taking out Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in a drone strike in Baghdad last week. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
Our Iran policy is about protecting and defending the homeland and securing American lives. I know that the efforts that we have taken, not only last week with the strike against Soleimani, but the strategy that we've employed has saved American lives.
On the Senate floor, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says lawmakers shouldn't rush to lash out at President Trump over the decision. Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says the president's foreign policy has been erratic.
He prefers reality show diplomacy and photo ops with foreign leaders to substantive progress.
Also on the Senate floor, McConnell says House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is trying to create what he calls a pretrial hostage negotiation over how to handle an impeachment trial. Talking about Pelosi's decision to withhold impeachment articles from the Senate, McConnell says House Democrats are waiting for some mystical leverage. He says he has trouble seeing what that is. Schumer says he and McConnell have very different ideas about what a fair trial means. He says it should include witnesses and documents. A study of more than 250,000 women finds those who use talc or other personal hygiene powders were not significantly more likely to develop ovarian cancer. This government-sponsored study is published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. Drug maker Johnson & Johnson is facing nearly 17,000 lawsuits claiming asbestos-tainted talc-based personal hygiene products do cause ovarian cancer. Right now, shares of J&J are down about 0.5%. Global news, 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
To see something far away, you can either get a powerful telescope or you can go there.
Talk about export numbers because they've been quite shocking. Korea, we saw Singapore, Japan too.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
How should investors be positioning?
When you take a look at the consumers in China, it remains challenging.
We go there.
To what extent is access to cheap credit part of the equation?
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
the Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast.
How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team?
Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners, Scott Soshnick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in it?
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run. Mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up, lift. Mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run. Mix it up. Add a boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing in January. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
This ain't just lunch. It's the KFC fill-up lunch for $1.99. It's mighty fine. Tingles your spine, so jump in line because it's time to dine on a mini fillet burger, 2 hot wings and fries, all for a fist-pumping $1.99. What the... The KFC fill-up lunch every day until 3 p.m. At participating restaurants every day from 2nd to 26th of January until 3 p.m. only, subject to availability.
You're listening to the sound of a Halifax customer who used to worry he wasn't saving enough, but is now saving the change on some popcorn at the cinema. Switch on Save the Change, and when you use your Halifax Visa debit card, we'll round up to the nearest pound and put the difference into your chosen Halifax savings account.
At TradePoint, we get just how busy you are. That's why we have a handy range of services to make your life easier. Whether it's cutting timber, matching bricks, or mixing paint, we help you make big jobs smaller. So for all you need, when you need it, get to TradePoint. Restrictions may apply. See tradepoint.co.uk.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slammed it down.
Get your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
At Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks have eased off earlier lows. The S&P did edge early into the red as investors remain concerned about an escalation in tensions with Iran. We check the markets every 15 minutes here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's down just 0.1%, down 3. Dow's down 0.1%, down 31. The NASDAQ is up 0.2%, up 14. The 10-year is little change. The yield is 1.81%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 1.4% now at 62.38 a barrel. COMEX gold's up 0.1% at 15.7120 an ounce. The dollar yen 108.58. The euro $1.1136, and the British pound $1.3112. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Today in Las Vegas launched the Consumer Electronics Show, the annual event that has turned increasingly into a car event where companies unveil their latest and greatest technologies. Joining us now is John Butler, Senior Telecom Services and Equipment Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, who is on scene there in Las Vegas. How long does it take to get a cab there now in front of the Bellagio? Do you know?
Not as long as you would think, Lisa, thanks to Uber. So I think they're stealing some of the business and taking pressure off the taxi line.
All right, so let's dig into what some of the highlights are that you've noticed there at CES.
So the most interesting thing to me is, and I've gone here for many, many years, is there's always sort of a dominant theme, whether it's smart home or smartphones or connected cars or 5G. And this show almost seems to be about the ecosystem, right? We're sort of in that era where, I don't know if we're moving beyond the smartphone per se, but we're moving to a world where the smartphone is helping to give us access and control other devices in the home, like Ring, for example, the Ring doorbell, or Nest for home heating. And so the show to me sort of spans everything from, connected appliances to 8K smart TVs all the way to streaming mobile video. So lots of themes, all competing for attention and all competing to be the theme. But none of them so far to me are really standing out as sort of a central or dominant theme.
Hey, John, as we talk about broad technology themes, telecommunications themes, 5G has really emerged as, for a lot of people, as the next big thing. How is 5G being talked about in Vegas this year?
It's being talked about in terms of how it can be leveraged for different applications. And so let's take appliances, for example. The thought is, why not be able to communicate back with your fridge when you're in the grocery store and figure out what's in there and what might be expiring and so forth? It's huge for connected cars when you think about it. And, the 5G pitch there is, hey, if the car can talk back to the dealer, that means new revenue streams for the dealer potentially as trouble tickets are sent back. So, 5G is being talked about in terms of potential use cases, right? We're still very early days, but here at the show, some of the use cases like that connected car application I just mentioned look very viable to me.
Yeah, I got to say, I just am already foreseeing a time when my son hacks into my refrigerator and has it tell me while I'm at the grocery store, you need more ice cream. Or I guess the freezer in that case. I'm just imagining all sorts of exciting developments stemming from these smart refrigerators and smart homes. I'm wondering, Apple making a big scene here, entering the CES conference, re-entering for the first time since 1992. Do we have any sense of what they're doing there in terms of their renewed entrance?
So I would call it a toe in the water, but I was shocked that they even have people here because, like you said, Lisa, they typically do not go to CES. But they do have Jane Horvath on a panel. She is in charge of their privacy business. And Zane Lowe, who is creative director for Apple Music, is also on a panel. later today, and later tomorrow, I believe, and I'll be listening to that. So just the fact that they're here and they're beginning to make announcements, for example, with LG and making the Apple TV Plus and Apple channels available on the smart TVs there is a big thing for them, because it tells me that they're looking to extend the revenue opportunity for services well beyond the installed base of Apple devices. And their presence here may be sort of an olive branch to get that ball rolling even faster.
John, what really struck me the last time I was there 2 or 3 years ago was how big of a presence the auto manufacturers. Is that still the case this year?
Yes, even bigger, Paul. You know, they're rolling computers when you think about it, or increasingly becoming that. And so, you know, as I mentioned a moment ago, I think 5G is going to figure very heavily into the future of automotive and the connected car. And so there's a lot going on here. It's not a big focus for me, per se, given my coverage in telecom and smartphones, but it is one of the dominant themes here. Like, if I had to call out 3 big themes, cars would be on the list.
So what have you seen so far that you really would want to buy?
Well, the exhibit's open this morning, so I'll reserve answering that till later today or tomorrow.
Good punt.
But I'll say this. I suspect it's going to be one of the 8K TVs.
8K TV, what is that? I mean, do we need 8K TV? Isn't HD enough?
What is that?
Well, we've gone from HD to 4K, which has blacker black, so you get this really deep contrast with the color scheme, and 8K takes it a step further. So it's almost better than reality, Paul.
Almost better than reality. Maybe your reality.
Somehow, no,
that's probably true.
I got to say, I don't doubt it. At a certain point, the virtual reality will probably be better than actual.
Right.
John, thanks so much for joining us from the CES conference in Las Vegas. John Butler, Senior Telecom Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. He's one of those 200,000 crazy tech geeks that cram themselves into Las Vegas and really see the latest in all the technology, and they have everything there.
You just went to this conference.
Oh, I know.
I don't know. Would you categorize yourself as a tech geek?
No, but you know what's interesting? All the media companies, that's probably one of their biggest conferences of the year, because and it's been that way for a long time, because they want to know how technology is changing the way people consume media, and it's been a big change. So everybody's in Vegas.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks lower on escalating tensions in the Middle East. Iran said it is evaluating 13 possible ways to inflict a historic nightmare on the U.S. for killing a powerful Iranian general. A rebound in sales and production lifted a gauge of service activity to a 4-month high in December, indicating the broader economy remains stable. That's according to data from the Institute for Supply Management. General Motors warned pressure on its China business to persist this year as the world's biggest auto market suffers a slump. GM and its partners sold a little more than 3 million vehicles in China in 2019. That represents a 15% decline for a company that was once the top foreign automaker in China. And American Airlines has reached a settlement with Boeing over last year's 737 MAX grounding, but the companies are still in talks over compensation beyond 2019. The carrier said it will share the around $30 million of the proceeds with employees. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance?
Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Are you interested in it?
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn. We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today. Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
Along the goal line, scores! It takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
Hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Move, hit a shot, they score!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in. Touchdown.
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slammed it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we'll take a look at gas stations and the credit card conundrum they are facing. Plus, we'll take a look at Goldman Sachs and some new tactics it's going to deploy to attract equity investors. Right now, though, let's head over to Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
How can I top credit card conundrum? We love alliteration here. The S&P has erased most of its early decline, which had been sparked by the tensions with Iran, after indicators pointed to a resilient U.S. economy. Tech buoyed the benchmark and pushed the NASDAQ higher. James Athey, Aberdeen Standard Investments, tells Bloomberg inflation will eventually come to the U.S., but Not right now.
But I think when the market comes to this view, which it is, and it has been, that inflation is dead forever, I think that's a dangerous place to be. So at some point, all of that globalized disinflation, supply shock disinflation is going to go away, and I think we could be looking at an inflationary environment then, yeah.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P's down 0.1% down 3, the Dow's down 0.1% down 41, and the Nasdaq's up 0.2% up 15. 10 years down 1/32. The yield is 1.81%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down 1.25% at 62.47 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 0.1% at 15.70 an ounce. The dollar yen is 108.59. The euro's $1.1138, and the British pound $1.31.18. Nike has signed a multi-year deal to be the official jersey or kit provider, if you will, for Liverpool Football Club, handing the current powerhouse European soccer to the world's largest sportswear maker by revenue. Liverpool's way ahead to win the trophy this year, and Nike is up 0.5%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, the fourth most read story on the Bloomberg terminal today is about the credit card business and gas stations. Apparently, the gas stations are not prepared to accept the chip reader credit cards, and apparently that's going to be a big problem. Really interesting story here. Jenny Serene, the reporter on that story, finance reporter for Bloomberg News, joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. Jenny, I didn't even know this was a thing. Scope it out for us. What's going on?
Yeah, I think a lot of people maybe haven't been, it's not something a lot of people pay attention to, but basically 5 years ago here in the U.S., we started making this transition to chip cards. And so people should be seeing that, at your regular bodega or your regular grocery store, instead of swiping, we now dip. And gas stations have been a little bit behind. They were given a little bit longer of a deadline to make that upgrade because you actually have to rip out the pump from the concrete and, replace it there. And it's a very big expense. And so the industry kind of recognized that. And so that deadline is actually coming up this year. You have to
replace the whole pump as opposed to just some little thing that accepts the credit card?
Yes. So the hardware for this is just a very unusual beast. And so, these gas station operators actually have to rip out from the concrete.
That sounds like a scam to me.
Yeah, well, that's actually, interestingly, the story, I got to say, I noticed that the people who were quoted were people who are involved in the installation of some of these events, saying they're woefully behind. They got to get on this. I mean, how big of a push is it on their part?
I think everyone realizes that the deadline is coming. And so what that deadline basically means is that after October, if a gas station hasn't upgraded its systems, it will suddenly face all liability for any card fraud that happens at the station. And so it's a big expense that's coming for these station operators. But the industry just says it's going to be really tough to make it.
On the credit card side, how much more secure is the chip versus the swipe? And by the way, I want to incorporate that into my lexicon. Instead of swiping, we now dip.
Right.
Okay, carry on.
It's so the chip was basically designed to head off counterfeit card fraud. So that's, I think a few years ago, the real risk was hackers would attach skimming devices onto the point of sale. And so when you swiped your card, they were able to get all of the card data and then basically go and make a counterfeit card and use that wherever they wanted to. So the chip basically heads that off by each time you dip your card, it creates a unique number. And so even if a hacker has infiltrated that point of sale device, they can't go and make copies of that card and use it wherever they want. So that kind of fraud is what this is really addressing. And it is a lot safer. We've seen counterfeit fraud dollars fall by, more than 50% since the 2015 deadline. And so it has addressed that. Now, hackers don't just go away because you've taken away one form. So we've seen a subsequent increase in other types of card fraud that the industry is now trying to address. But at least for counterfeit card fraud, the chip did do what it was supposed to do.
What's different? When I'm over in London for business, I notice people just kind of tapping their card. And so when I walk up to pay for a sandwich, the person behind the counter just like sighs because now they have to dip it and do it.
The American
sign it,
here.
exactly, sign something. What's that technology? Why don't we have that?
It's coming. So the U.S. is woefully behind the rest of the world in terms of adoption of tap to pay, but it's coming. So you've seen it so far. The MTA has started to install these readers on the subway, so you should start to see that more and more. And I think retailers kind of, in a lot of ways, follow transit. So when you see these big transit operators adopting that technology, you should start to see other retailers. But it's this one area of finance where the U.S. has long been a leader in so many things. things within the credit card industry, but this is where we really fall behind.
Well, going back to gas stations, if they're spending all this money to implement entirely new pumps to dip rather than swipe, are they going to have to do it again so that we can tap?
So it should be one upgrade. That's what you've seen with a lot of the other retailers who had the 2015 deadline. So it should be one upgrade. Now, just because a retailer adopts the dipping does not mean they have to adopt tapping. So some retailers have said they don't want to. There's a lot of different reasons for that. A lot of retailers are starting to come up with their own forms of mobile payments. So they maybe don't want, someone walking in and using Apple Pay. So you've seen a little bit of kind of differentiation. It's another area for retailers to kind of catch up. They've got a lot of catching up to do with
I have to say, I can just imagine someone coming up to one of those things and just like taking their card, just like smacking it and then dipping it and sliding it. I mean, honestly,
just
people are going to go a little confused after a while.
Jenny, do you carry cash?
I am a weird millennial that does carry cash, yes.
You are a weird millennial. Okay, because this kind of goes to the issue of kind of the cashless society, and you actually see some stores. There's a restaurant, I guess they're right here on Lexington Avenue, that, sign out front, we do not accept cash.
Yeah, but it's kind of a gimmick, isn't it?
Is it? I don't know.
It's actually a big debate. Folks actually are now saying that going cashless might take advantage of poor people who only carry cash and don't have access to financial services.
I carry cash.
I always carry cash.
Yes.
I carry cash. No one asks, but I do. But not that anyone should really know that.
If I'm a gas station owner going back, how much does it cost? It sounds like a lot.
So it can vary. The averages are right now about $30,000 per store to upgrade all of your pumps. And, that's really hard for an industry where profit margins are less than 2%. Right, so it's a really big outlay at any point in time that these gas station operators are going to have to make.
Swipe, dip, tap.
Yep.
Swipe, dip, tap, and swing. Thank you so much for being with us, Jenny Serrain. I'm going to get absolutely pummeled for saying that. Jenny Serrain is a Bloomberg finance reporter joining us here in our 1130 studios, or interactive broker studios. I got to say, it is amazing how behind the U.S. is on this front, and the fact that these upgrades are happening and they're not happening to the next evolution is rather strange to me.
Yeah, you think you would do it for no other reason than security.
I mean, well, right. And we will see. Maybe we'll get to where London is before they change to the, shake. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with world and national headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, the U.S. is bracing for reprisals from Iran over the killing of the country's most powerful general. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo continues to assert President Trump made the right call in taking out Qasem Soleimani.
In the event the Iranians make another bad choice, that President will respond in a way that he did last week, which was decisive, serious, and message to Iran about the constraints that we are going to place on that regime so that it doesn't continue to put American lives at risk.
Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif.
The United States has been in this region for many years and has not brought itself or the region any security.
Iran has said it's considering 13 possible scenarios for retaliation. Threat analysts tell Bloomberg U.S. corporations should prepare for cyber attacks within a month. Senate Republicans are accusing House Speaker Nancy Pelosi of holding impeachment hostage as she and other Democrats wait for assurances a trial against President Trump would include witnesses and documents before they deliver the articles of impeachment. Democratic Senator Mark Warner.
The Speaker will make her own decision on this. I think we've seen over the last number of years that Speaker Pelosi is a thoughtful.
Former National Security Advisor John Bolton has said he's willing to testify at a Senate trial after the White House blocked him from appearing before the House impeachment inquiry. Democrat Elizabeth Warren has rolled out a plan to restore bankruptcy protections that were repealed in a 2005 law that was pushed by then Senator, now Democratic candidate Joe Biden. Global news on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that so in 10 years we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water? NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise.
It's great being with Eon. Right now, they're offering their customers the chance to win big thanks to an exclusive prize draw, with the top prize being a £5,000 holiday. Where to? Well, you choose the destination and they do the rest. Another winter warmer from Eon. To check out all the great prizes on offer, for the full terms and conditions, and to enter, go to eonenergy.com/win by the 30th of January.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night, and somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here, testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value, with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 500-gram tub of Anchor Salted Spreadable from £3.50 to just £2. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 14th of January.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today. Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
next time you look up at the stars, think about this.
Inside you are the remains of a stellar explosion. You are made of stardust. And without the stars, there wouldn't be us.
I'm Guy Raj, the wonders of the universe and the people who still look up every night. Next time on the TED Radio Hour from NPR. You can subscribe to the TED Radio Hour on TuneIn.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Well, the S&P had erased most of its earlier decline, which had been sparked by those tensions with Iran, after indicators pointed to a resilient U.S. economy. Tech's doing the best and has pushed the NASDAQ quite a bit higher. We check the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is now down 0.2%, down 6. The Dow's down 0.25%, down 72, and the NASDAQ's up 0.1%, up 8. The 10-year is little changed. The yield is 1.80%. West Texas Intermediate is down 1.1% at $62.55 a barrel, with COMEX Gold up 0.2% at $15.7220 an ounce. The dollar yen is at 108.57. The euro is $1.1137, and the British pound $1.3123. Elon Musk was apparently excited enough about Tesla's prospects in China. He was moved to dance. He apparently waltzed, I should say, across the stage of Tesla's new factory outside Shanghai, and said that they're planning on producing the upcoming Model Y crossover at that plant. Tesla is currently up 2%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Goldman Sachs has long been known for accounting for things differently in its reports. Now it is changing the way it does things as it tries to attract greater equity investment. Joining us now is Sridhar Natarajan, a finance reporter for Bloomberg News. Thank you so much for being here. He covers all things Goldman Sachs and investment banking generally. Sri, what did we learn today?
What they've gone and done, I guess, is a very interesting reworking of how they present their earnings to investors. And a lot of it stems from this frustration within Goldman, especially with the management, that they don't quite get the credit they deserve for how well the business is performing. And part of that is on them. For the longest time, Goldman has had this reputation of being a bit of a black box into how it makes money. Over the years, they have made more efforts at opening up, trying to give more visibility to investors and analysts, and they're really hoping this change where they're adding sort of new breakdowns into how various divisions report their numbers and really what goes into the revenues from each division. They're hoping when people see that, they will realize that this is something that Goldman is doing well and can continue to grow, and therefore the stock should pop.
So it's interesting. The Goldman Sachs I grew up competing against was institutional, but they've actually started a little bit more of a retail focus over the last several years. I'm thinking about the Marcus online lending unit, the credit card venture they have with Apple. Is this new accounting to say, hey, we've got this new business and we want to highlight it some more? Have they been successful? Is that they want to try to highlight a successful business?
That certainly is one big part of the change today, which is they are setting up a separate division line for all their consumer efforts, which involves stuff like their online lending business Marcus, their credit card with Apple. But to be clear, Goldman's annual revenue of about $30 billion and change, the consumer banking effort isn't going to make a huge dent in that. But at least they have maintained that you shouldn't judge it over a 1, 2, or 3 year time frame. This was probably something that will take 10, maybe 20 years to become a significant pillar of its business. But by setting it aside, people at least have a good way of seeing how it's growing quarter on quarter, year on year. So it definitely will have a benefit on that front.
There have been reports, the way that this was couched in a number of different reports today was that there has been a veil of secrecy over Goldman Sachs and its accounting mechanisms, and that this is sort of a way of making it more transparent. Is that an accurate assessment?
It's an attempt at being more transparent, but the bottom line is just moving around how the performance is logged into various business units is certainly not going to be the big winner that the company hopes for it to be. You still have to see how you've been reporting figures in various divisions and provide even more granularity, because that's what investors and analysts have been asking for. For instance, investing in lending, this division that they've had as a standalone for about 8 years, which really how they make money with a lot of their own investing activities. Investors just didn't know how to value it. They felt it was too volatile and they didn't give it too much credit. At least that's what the Goldman team would tell you. Now they're saying, hey, we'll give you more of a breakdown, which they have been doing over the past few quarters. Now they're just disbanding that reporting line and putting all those investment activities, whether it's equity investments and it's debt investments, into other groups and saying, here's where it is, here's how we expect it to grow, and here's more visibility into that. Now, the last part is the important one. If they give us more visibility into the breakdown of the portfolio, how it's growing, what are the expectations, then perhaps you will see more comfort from analysts and investors, but it's not clear if we'll necessarily get that.
I'm curious about the consumer banking unit because we've heard mixed things about just how well that has done in its expansion and effort to be profitable. What have we learned there, either in the disclosures or in their carving this out more transparently?
For starters, it's $1 billion in the hole. They have put in a lot of money to try and grow this business. It would be unfair to sort of look at profitability metrics and revenue metrics just right away because we're in such early innings on that front. Online lending, Goldman sort of, as you mentioned, for the longest time has been this firm that has focused and worked with the biggest institutions, with the biggest corporations, the money managers, the hedge funds. You're asking them to go from that to dealing with the little man on the street. How do you make that work overnight? It won't happen overnight. They have made some progress, but it's still going to take a lot more time for results to come off on that front. And they will tout the fact that you shouldn't necessarily look into the investments that have gone into it and look at it as a loss. They are also saying, look at the number of people we've been able to reach, the number of accounts we've opened. Over time, those will become incredible sources of consistent revenue.
Looking at the stock, Sri, the stock's up another 0.8% today, hitting a 52-week high. And you pointed out earlier, they've been hitting lots of 52-week highs this year. What's the bull case out there on Wall Street for Goldman Sachs right now?
One of the issues with the Goldman stock has been that it has been chronically undervalued. It's one of the few bank stocks that traded below book value for almost all of last year. That's changed as we've gotten into the new year and towards the end of last year, but that was a big problem with it. One of the things that has been weighing on the stock has been this whole overhang of their 1MDB scandal and really how they end up on that front. There have been reports from us and others over the last few weeks that they're nearing a settlement with prosecutors. So that should certainly be a major help.
And on that front, actually just crossing a headline right now that an ex-Goldman Sachs banker does plead guilty in the insider trading case. This is a different case, I believe. No, this is what let me see. Hold on one second. I'm wondering whether this is related.
If it's insider trading, it probably isn't the 1MDB case. Goldman has had a bit of a problem on the insider trading front as well. In the last 18 months, they've had 3 of their bankers charged with insider trading. It's certainly a streak that they wouldn't be happy with, and it's caused a lot of irritation for their bankers. But they've also said, look, these are one-off situations. This isn't proof of any cultural rot at the firm.
Is Goldman Sachs really committed to this consumer business?
If you trust their CEO, and I see no reason why not to trust him, they certainly are very committed. They point out that about 20 years ago, they got into the whole asset management business or merchant banking division, right? Which is their private equity investments and real estate and infrastructure. And it has grown into one of the biggest alternative investment managers out there. And it is a major driver of their revenue and profitability right now. But it took a lot of time to get there. Right. They're saying you have to look at consumer banking from the same lens. It is something we're committed to. It is not going to be a game changer today or tomorrow or day after, but it will have a meaningful impact on how the firm grows in the years and decades to come.
Thanks so much, Sri Natarajan, giving us the update on the Goldman Sachs story. Sri is a finance reporter for Bloomberg News, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Coming up, Balance of Power with David Weston. That'll be coming up just momentarily on Bloomberg Radio. Markets a little bit red here. We have the S&P down 8, the Dow down 100, NASDAQ up just slightly. Along with my colleague and co-host Lisa Abramowitz, I'm Paul Sweeney, and this is Bloomberg Markets.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listings. Interconnect here.
How can it be fair that millions of people in the world are denied access to clean water? At WaterAid, we need your help to create an equal world. Whether you're from Morden or Madagascar, everyone, everywhere, should have access to clean water. Because clean water changes lives. You can help WaterAid change the picture. To find out how, search WaterAid Radio now.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Hear every play of the NFL playoffs live with the NFL on TuneIn Premium. The divisional round kicks off Saturday at 4:35 p.m. Eastern when the Vikings travel cross-country to take on the 49ers in an NFC showdown in Santa Clara. The action continues at 8:15 as the Ravens host the Tennessee Titans in Baltimore. On Sunday, listen live beginning at 3:05 Eastern as the Texans and Chiefs square off in Kansas City, followed by the Seahawks and Packers at 6:40 in Green Bay. The excitement of the NFL playoffs is on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today. Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, I'm David Weston. Welcome to Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. On the brief today, Bill Ferry's from Washington on Iran and Secretary of State Pompeo's briefing. Also from Washington, Anna Edgerton on what John Bolton's agreement to testify might do to the impeachment process. And Greg Farrell right here in New York on Tokyo prosecutors adding Carlos Ghosn's wife to the list of people they'd like to arrest. So let's start with Bill Ferry's. Bill, Iran, of course, is the topic of the day. We heard Secretary of State Pompeo have remarks just about an hour and a half ago now. Did we learn anything?
Not a whole lot new there. Secretary Pompeo came out in his longest public remarks since the weekend and basically said, the U.S. is confident in the intelligence it used and the justification it had to target Soleimani. He continued to say that it's Iran's regime which has taken the aggressive steps here, and the U.S. continues to be prepared to respond to it. It follows some heightened tensions today as the head of Iran's National Security Council said the country was looking to inflict a, quote, historic nightmare on the United States. And late yesterday, one of the key developments was the Pentagon dispatching about 2,200 more Marines to the Persian Gulf as part of an amphibious assault group.
It was interesting to me, Bill, that the Secretary, when he was pressed on the intelligence about what the imminent effect is going to be, he also said, you know what, a lot of intelligence is what he'd already done. I mean, he already attacked Americans. What more do you really need? That's not necessarily an anticipatory self-defense.
Right. The first reaction from the U.S. or the first commentary was that there was an imminent threat posed by Soleimani. Iranians and even Iraqi officials have countered and said that Soleimani was on some kind of a diplomatic mission responding to a Saudi peace initiative. Pompeo mocked that and said, essentially, this is a guy who has a lot of blood on his hands. No one believes that he was on a diplomatic mission.
Bill, there's a lot of focus right now on Washington and Tehran. What about Iraq? What about Baghdad? Where are we with the notion that we might actually leave the country, pull our forces out of there?
A lot of confusion yesterday late when what apparently seemed to have been a draft letter from U.S. military officials starting to talk about repositioning of U.S. forces ahead of a potential departure from the country. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs came out and said, no, that was a draft. It was a mistake that it was sent. But the Iraqis, have already taken a vote in their parliament starting the process of asking the U.S. to leave. So there's a lot of tension there over whether there will be a formal request and how the U.S. will respond to that if it takes place.
Okay, Bill, thank you so much for the report from Washington. That is Bill Ferries. And now to Anna Edgerton, also down in Washington. Let's talk about impeachment. About 24 hours ago right now, we heard that John Bolton, the former national security advisor to President Trump, said he would testify if subpoenaed. Does that change the calculus on the Republican senator's part?
It could. It could put pressure on Mitch McConnell, who so far has resisted calls from Democrats for additional witnesses in the Senate trial. Now, Chuck Schumer has listed 4 administration officials that he would like to see testify in order to kind of fill out the picture that the House had uncovered of Trump's actions in Ukraine that was the basis of the impeachment process. So now that John Bolton is saying that he is willing to testify if issued a subpoena, that puts a bit more pressure on Mitch McConnell to actually issue a subpoena, which could happen with a simple majority vote in the Senate.
And where's the White House? I mean, early on it was said that the White House wanted a full trial, but Mitch McConnell didn't. Mitch McConnell persuaded perhaps the president not to do it. Do we know where the White House is on this issue?
There is some tension between the White House and Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell definitely has an idea of how he wants the trial to look. No surprises, tightly controlled process. He's kind of laid out 2 phases that would, start with the initial opening arguments from the House, possibly calling witnesses in the second phase, although he hasn't actually committed to doing that. It was interesting. We had some reporting yesterday that the White House didn't know that John Bolton was going to offer to testify. So that suggests that Bolton's not coordinating his strategy with the White House, and really raises a question of what he would say if he were called to testify in the Senate.
Exactly, which is one of the problems with a trial. You never know what's going to come out. It's hard to predict. Okay, thank you very much, Anna. That's Anna Edgerton reporting from Washington. And now we want to turn right now to Greg Farrell. There's big news on Carlos Ghosn. It's not just Carlos Ghosn that the Tokyo prosecutors now want to arrest. It's also his wife. Why?
Yes. Well, they believe that she's been, consulting with him. She was involved in some of the alleged wrongdoing at Nissan, and I think they're looking to change the story a little bit. There's going to be a big press conference tomorrow morning here in New York time with Carlos Ghosn, and I think this whole thing has been a huge embarrassment for the Japanese government. So this is a way to, look like they're taking action and moving forward.
And given what Carlos Ghosn has signaled already, it's possible the Japanese have not seen the worst of it, because he basically sounds like he's going to take it to the Japanese, say it was all their fault.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, like me, you're old enough to remember Enron.
I do.
Just imagine if one of the chief executives of Enron, prior to trial, had fled for Switzerland or Mexico. Guilty. That's a presumption of guilt because the U.S. justice system is world class. Now, Ghosn has a similar problem, except he's going to try to throw all the focus on the Japanese regulatory system and bring evidence to bear that it is manifestly unfair. So that's his PR challenge, if you will, and I expect we'll see a big dose of that tomorrow.
Yeah, and to an American, at least, used to our system of justice, it just seems unusual. They detain the person for this long, wouldn't let him talk to his wife.
Yes, exactly.
So many constraints.
Highly unusual.
It's unusual. We're not used to that.
So he's got some material to work with.
Yeah, it doesn't make it wrong. It's just not something we're used to. Okay, many thanks now to Greg Farrell reporting on Carlos Ghosn. And now it's that time when we get a check on how the markets are reacting to today's top stories. Joining us now is Abigail Doolittle. And I guess my main question, Abigail, is are we sort of getting over the geopolitical risk-off sort of thing?
It's not clear right now, David. Mixed messages coming from the markets because we do have fluctuations for the major averages between gains and losses. And it seemed as though, yes, that was about to happen. But now we have relatively modest losses for the major averages. You can see that NASDAQ putting in a fractional gain. The SOX, that chip index, putting in a bigger gain, but that has to do with some company-specific news. The Russell 2000 slightly down. So again, there's not really a clear message. Interestingly, though, we have these fluctuations, this intraday volatility that usually leads to closing daily volatility on above-average volume by about 20%. So investors not really knowing what to do, but they're doing more of it.
What's going on with bonds? I mean, they still seem to be on a buy.
Yeah, they've been fluctuating as well. So one clear signal is from that Haven yen that we've talked about. That's actually down. So that that tells you that investors are all not that clear in terms of what's next. And then oil, which had been up around these increasing tensions, right now down more than 1%. So again, it's not very clear what investors think about this. Probably assessing not going to affect the corporate profit outlook right now, but with that threat of a historic nightmare for the U.S., you would think that there would be a greater reaction here, but we're just not seeing it right now.
But the one sure thing to go up is gold. No matter what happens, gold keeps going up.
Gold futures now up 10 days in a row, the longest streak in about a year. So it's that's one place that investors are certainly going to in all this.
Okay, so we'll keep watching it to figure it out. Okay, thanks so much to Abigail Doolittle reporting on the markets. And now we turn to Mark Crumpton. He's here with Bloomberg First Word News. Mark?
David, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is accusing Iran of trying to work to sabotage efforts to bring peace to Afghanistan. Secretary Pompeo spoke at a State Department briefing today.
Iran has refused to join the regional and international consensus for peace and is, in fact, today, actively working to undermine the peace process by continuing its long global effort to support militant groups there.
Secretary Pompeo also said General Qasem Soleimani was not on a diplomatic mission in Iraq before he was killed in a U.S. airstrike. More than 50 people were killed today and more than 200 hurt after a stampede broke out at Soleimani's funeral. The presidents of Russia and Syria met in Damascus today. It was Vladimir Putin's second visit to the war-torn country, where his troops have been fighting alongside Syrian government forces since 2015. Russia has been a main backer of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and has tipped the balance of power in his favor over the past 4 years, with government forces now in control in most of the country. In Spain, socialist leader Pedro Sanchez has won a narrow victory in parliament. Today's vote ends 9 months of political gridlock. Spain will get its first coalition government since the 1930s. The result gives the interim prime minister a mandate to reverse some of the policies that helped Spain emerge from an economic crisis 6 years ago. On Capitol Hill, the standoff continues over how and when to conduct President Trump's Senate impeachment trial. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi must decide when or whether to send the impeachment charges to the Senate. On Monday, former National Security Advisor John Bolton said he would testify if he's subpoenaed. That could complicate Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's plan for swift proceedings with no witnesses. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. Coming up, a strong 2019 turns into a less certain 2020. We talk with Stephanie Kelly of Aberdeen Standard about what the new year holds in store. That's coming up next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Revisions, return policy.
Take the helm and ignite your spirit of adventure with a Sunsail holiday. Relax on a skippered yacht from sunny St. Lucia to the nutmeg-scented shores of Grenada. Or take charge with a bareboat charter along Dubrovnik's glittering coastline. With up to 20% off selected destinations, now is the time to book your Sunsail adventure. Sunsail. See the world differently.
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it up. Add a boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing in January. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run.
Mix it.
At Asda, our baby event is now on. Get Dove baby lotion. Was £2.50, now only £1.55. And the Tommy Tippy Perfect Prep Machine was £100, now just £60. Great brands, great prices. Don't compromise. Asda, save money, live better. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30 gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Harry Bikers here. This message goes out to something very special.
Yes, we're talking to you, chicken.
Maybe we've been seeing too much of each other.
But times have changed, Dave.
We've been cheating on meat.
Thing is, no stocks make veggie dishes so irresistible that cheating on meat is proper tasty.
Our dear chicken, you were the fire in my life, but it's all about you now, aubergine katsu curry. Prepare to be wined and dined, my love.
Cheat on meat with no veggie stocks.
Ladies and gentlemen, behold the world's most fantastical, sensational number. 64 million. Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £64 million.
Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Peoples of London. Are you like Sergei, working your paws off from 9 to 5, then cooking for whole family? Well, I, Alexander, have taken responsibility for tonight's splendid evening meal.
Ooh, let me guess. Meerkat meals?
Of course. You know how I roll. Get 2 for 1 on food with Meerkat meals at your local favorites. Like the yacht, when you buy through Compare the Market.
Qualifying purchase, app only, 2 for 1 on selected food, participating restaurants, a la carte only, Sunday to Thursday, T's and C's and exclusions apply.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
We say how this will be resolved, I think, is lower than in the case where you can genuinely do real scenario planning in other cases.
So if you're an investor going into 2020, how do you take into account, if you do it all Iran or U.S.-China or Brexit, some of the things that you just mentioned, how do you take that into account in deciding where you're going to be invested more or less?
So the way that I think is the best way to move forward is never to assume that you have 100% clarity and awareness of what is going to happen in politics. I would say, as a political economist, I'm the first to say there's always uncertainty because humans have free will and politicians have free will. But I think what's useful for investors is instead to think about what are the distribution of outcomes and what will that mean for assets. So, for example, with Brexit, it's not just about what does the relationship look like, but it's also what is the likelihood that you get a free trade agreement versus no deal. Indeed, in the US, you can say, what is the likelihood that you get a Democratic president or a Republican president, and what does that mean for assets? And by doing that, you have an understanding of the distribution that you think in terms of probabilities, but also the distribution of asset prices and what that means for different sectors. And then you're ready, you're prepared, and then you can act on it.
So let's take that in the order you just described. On Brexit, clearly there's going to be a Brexit January 31. That was one thing we think we know at this point. Whether there's going to be some comprehensive agreement by the end of the year is a very different question. And if Prime Minister Boris Johnson really intends on meeting a deadline, it means you're not going to have a complete free trade agreement, right? You can't get that done in that time.
If you're talking about a comprehensive free trade agreement where you're talking about a little bit of services and lots of goods allowances and agreements on issues like rules of origin, that's unlikely to get done. I always say, we compared recently every EU trade deal that's been done, and a year is, the least amount of time it's taken is 3 years. So you have to assume that in the absence of them doing a really limited free trade agreement, what I mean by that is just saying zero tariffs on goods, but that's it. Right. That's super limited. If they go that way, maybe you can get there in time, but it's worth bearing in mind, the UK is coming out of the EU, so it's not just about what you put in, it's also about what you take out, and what does that mean for things like the services sector, where until now regulations have kind of been together. Are you explicitly going to diverge, and what does that mean for access for different sectors?
I wonder if we haven't focused enough on the services issue, because as I understand it, the trade ranges between the UK and Europe is Europe essentially exports a lot of goods to the UK exports a lot of services to Europe. Yeah. And if in fact is there going to be a curtailing of that, it could hurt England, couldn't it, quite a bit? Yes, absolutely. I think you were spot on the money. I think there is a focus on goods because it's easier. It's easier to talk about tariffs. It's, always more straightforward to talk about tariffs. But actually the services sector in the UK is a major part of the UK economy and a major part of trade with the EU. So it does matter the extent to which services sectors continue. But it's really hard because it's intangible. It's things like, do your qualifications as an accountant count now that you're in the UK outside of Brexit? Or can you kind of set up business more easily? How much regulatory freedom is there? And those are difficult questions to answer, and they take time. And if you're an accountant, it really matters. And if you're an accountant, it matters. Or a banker, or a lawyer, things like that. Okay, one last minute on U.S. elections. You mentioned that as well. To what extent are people really taking into account the possibility it won't be Donald Trump? Because a lot of political experts here say, barring something unusual, Donald Trump has the inside track. I think it's probably fair to say it's more unusual that you would see that him losing, given that he hasn't lost a lot of support with his own base. That said, it's a whole new Democratic race, and whether it's Joe Biden or whether it's Elizabeth Warren or whether it's Pete Buttigieg or even Bernie Sanders, that really matters for how the race plays out. So for us, it's kind of a staging whereby to credibly say something about the outcome of that election, you need to first understand what's happening in those primaries. I think, interestingly for us, is there's a tendency for investors to focus on US-China trade war and the uncertainty that brings, but actually a Democratic Party president would likely see things like increased regulation in those key sectors for the equity index, so financials, healthcare, tech. Those are the kind of areas, and energy, which I think would have significant implications. We've got to keep an eye on it. We spent a lot of 2019 worrying about US-China trade. Is this sort of off the table right now, sort of a limited phase one deal, probably not a phase two right away? I think it's probably fair to say that the limited phase one deal is, pretty close to getting wrapped up. Although, again, you never say never when it comes to US-China. The risk is actually for us that the agreement that the US has talked about from the Chinese side seems really, those kind of goods purchases they're talking about are huge relative to the norm. And so if that doesn't come through, then I think the risk of re-escalation comes back all over again. And there you have it. 2020 in a nutshell. Thank you so much. It's great to have you here. That's Stephanie Kelly. She's Senior Global Economist at Aberdeen Standard Investments. Just moments ago, Bloomberg surveillance anchor Tom Keene spoke to former Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan from his offices in Washington. Chairman Greenspan said that he remains very concerned about the U.S. deficit and offered this piece of advice as one way to trim the numbers.
We have a defined benefit program for Social Security and, in fact, pretty much everything else. What we need to do is to go to a defined contribution program, which is the 401k is all we have. That will put a damper on where our major problem lies.
And you can hear more of Tom's interview with Chairman Greenspan airing throughout the day on Bloomberg Television and on radio. Coming up this Friday, I'm going to be hosting a new program for Bloomberg Television, radio, and digital. Bloomberg Wall Street Week will bring back an icon of business television, originally hosted by Louis Rukeyser. We'll bring you the most important stories of the week, stories that affect Wall Street and the world, with a regular panel of thought leaders. This week, it will be Larry Summers, former Secretary of the Treasury, and Roger Ferguson, CEO of TIAA, talking about the events of the week. Our panel will be joined by Michelle Flournoy. She's former Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, to discuss one of the top stories of the week, that is the escalating tensions with Iran. That will come your way this Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Bloomberg Television and Radio. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba,
please be done.
Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. Full breakfast, cup of coffee, whatever you have in the morning, have it at daybreak.
Event risk is taking center stage for traders.
Nathan Hager.
We get a policy decision from the Federal Reserve.
And Karen Moscow.
It is the fifth major industry player to make some sort of zero commission offer.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Bloomberg has more from Hong Kong.
Weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. It is time now for the stock of the hour. Shares of Johnson & Johnson have been bouncing around today, this despite results from a new study that may derail arguments that the company's talc baby powder causes cancer. Haley Lyons is here with more. So I got to say, Johnson & Johnson baby powder, this is the core franchise. This is the brand.
Right, and there's been a lot of ongoing legal issues with this brand. I mean, in the fall, you had the FDA issuing a recall of these products, 30,000 bottles of it essentially removed from stores because they found asbestos in it. And of course, Johnson & Johnson is also facing upwards of 17,000 lawsuits, allegations essentially that this causes cancer, both ovarian as well as mesothelioma. And what's interesting... of these cases in 2019, but obviously there are still thousands outstanding.
And in science, it's almost impossible to prove a negative.
Right.
But in fairness, Johnson & Johnson has been saying all along, we keep doing these scientific studies. We can't find it. We find no evidence of that, even though there are all these lawsuits and there's some risk.
About 12,000 have been consolidated into one court in New Jersey. And it just yesterday, last night actually, Johnson & Johnson settled one of these cases in California for reportedly $2 million, which is a rare thing. They don't usually settle. They usually litigate until the bitter end. But if you take that $2 million number and apply it to all of those cases, this could be billions and billions of dollars in financial risk.
Well, and it's not just baby powder. I mean, if you're the Johnson & Johnson General Counsel, that's not the only thing on your agenda. You also have those opioid cases. You
have a lot of opioid cases. Actually, just last week, Washington State opened a new one. And it's not just opioids, although that is a big one with potentially maybe $5 billion in legal damages. You also have artificial hip issues, antipsychotic drug, Risperdal has had a number of issues. I mean, they are facing 100,000 different lawsuits here, so there's a lot on your mind if you're J&J's legal counsel.
A lot of risk and a lot of numbers. At the same time, they've got a pretty strong balance sheet. I mean, it's not they're going to be pushed to the wall. They've got a lot of money.
Financially, they're pretty sound. They have really stable long-term cash flows. In the last 12 months, it was more than $19 billion. And so, yes, we're not talking about inconsequential amounts of money here. Billions of dollars in settlements is not something you want to see as an investor or as a company. But frankly, Johnson & Johnson probably can handle it. It's not going to bankrupt the company.
Yeah, and as I say, it's not just the awards or potential awards of damages, it's also the reputational risk. It's the brand.
Right, reputation risk. And then beyond damages, the longer these cases are drawn out, as I said, J&J likes to litigate until the bitter end. There's a lot of legal fees associated with that.
Good for the lawyers. That's always good for the lawyers. Okay, many thanks now to Bloomberg's Kay Elias for that report on Johnson & Johnson. Coming up next here is there's still a diplomatic path forward with Iran after that strike that killed General Soleimani. We talk with Barbara Leaf. She's former U.S. Ambassador to the United Arab Emirates. That's coming up next. That's going to be on Balance of Power. We are on Bloomberg Television, and we are on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. A new study of 250,000 women casts doubt on whether using baby powder actually causes cancer. This government study follows news today that Johnson & Johnson will pay a woman $2 million over her claims that its baby powder led to her cancer. Stocks are mixed on Wall Street, but weak because of Mideast tensions. The Dow down 110 points. The S&P is down 8. The Nasdaq, though, is up just about 3. If you've got just over $4, you can now own Pier 1 stock. It's down again today on news that Pier 1 will close half its stores because business is so bad. Tesla stock cost 100 times more than Pier 1's. In fact, it's at a new all-time high after Tesla began delivering its new Model 3s to the Chinese market. Legal pot in Canada is now draining that country's beer sales. In the first full year of legal cannabis, beer volumes dropped 3%, 10 times as much as in the 3 years prior to that. I'm Chuck Kamlick, Bloomberg Radio.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
3, 2, 1. Oh no. Which button am I?
When every second counts, you can't wing it.
Guys, a little help up here?
In a home fire, you may have less than 2 minutes to get out. So make a family home fire escape plan. Then practice home fire drills at least twice a year so everyone knows what to do when they hear. Prepare your family at ready.gov/fire drill. Brought to you by FEMA, the Ad Council, and Make Safe Happen.
You can't be expected to research every industry
You do have an incredible vantage point.
or new technology
The United States is usually early adopting in terms of technologies.
or trend.
This is going to fit into the grander scheme of electric vehicles.
And really, why should you? We already do. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly. Weekday afternoons at 2 on Bloomberg 1130, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
From New York, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we turn now to Mark Crumpton.
David, thank you. More than 50 people are dead and more than 200 hurt after a stampede broke out at a funeral for a top Iranian general killed in a U.S. airstrike. Iranian news agencies report the stampede happened in General Qasem Soleimani's hometown as the funeral procession began. Officials delayed Soleimani's burial, citing concerns about the massive crowd. After fighting through attempts by security forces to force him and allied lawmakers out, Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido entered the National Assembly today and began the first legislative session of the year. Earlier, the pro-government group led by Luis Barra, which has claimed the presidency, attempted to hold a session without a quorum. After Guaido entered, lawmakers voted to recognize his re-election as head of the National Assembly for 2020 and rejected Barra's attempt at claiming the role. Puerto Rico's been rocked by another earthquake. The latest one was a 6.4 magnitude quake that hit early today. It was followed 3 hours later by an aftershock measuring 6. They are the largest in a series of quakes that have struck the U.S. territory in recent days, causing heavy damage. At least one person has been killed. Widespread power outages have been reported. Lawmakers in Congress are feeling strong political pressure to reach a deal on lowering drug prices. The issue is one of a few that Democrats and President Trump have vowed to address, even with the impeachment process, heightened tensions in the Middle East, and a presidential campaign getting underway. Government health programs expiring in May give lawmakers one deadline for a possible drug pricing compromise. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. Secretary Pompeo, in his briefing earlier today, made plain that the United States will keep up its campaign of maximum pressure on the Iranian regime.
I think the president's been unambiguous in both the remarks he made down in Florida as well as the tweets that he's put out about the seriousness with which we take this, the risk attendant that we are deeply aware of, and the preparations we've made to prevent those risks, as well as our determination that in the event the Iranians make another bad choice, that President will respond in a way that he did last week.
Welcome now, Barbara Leaf, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Arab Emirates. Earlier in her career, Ambassador Leaf served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Iraq. She is currently a fellow at the Washington Institute and heads the program in Arab politics there. She comes to us today from Washington. So, Madam Ambassador, thank you for joining us. And listening to Secretary Pompeo there and talking about maximum pressure, I think he was talking about Iran. But what kind of pressure is Iraq feeling right now? They have an acting government. They essentially don't have a government in place. And now the parliament voted to actually ask us to leave the country. What are the pressures on possibly making the United States leave the country?
Well, David, you're right that Iraq is feeling very much in the middle of a squeeze plate. But I want to look at that issue of what the parliament did or didn't do on Sunday. So the headline piece has been that Iraqi lawmakers have voted to expel U.S. forces from Iraq. That's not quite the true story. In fact, there wasn't even a proper legal quorum for the session. There was huge pressure placed on Shia parliamentarians in particular, but not only, via threatening text messages from militias, including Khatab Hezbollah, to compel them to show up for a vote. But in fact, virtually all the Kurdish and Sunni members of parliament stayed away. And so there wasn't a quorum. It was reported that they had a bare quorum, but it was not even 170. It was well south of that. The parliament also doesn't have a legal role or authority to compel U.S. forces to leave. In fact, that resides with the executive branch, with the acting prime minister. He confused things further by calling in the U.S. ambassador the following day and urging him to begin the process for bringing U.S. troops out. A lot of confusion.
A lot of confusion, and we didn't help the situation anymore with this letter that we now say was a mistaken draft that went out that apparently indicated that maybe the U.S. troops would be withdrawing, and that is a U.S. military letter. I guess mistakes happen, but boy, that's an awfully awkward time and place to have that mistake happen.
Yes, it's made a huge kerfuffle. The interesting thing to me as an analyst is that it is
spooked Iraqi politicians further to think about the implications, about how quickly the U.S. might in fact withdraw its troops. And it's quite clear that there is not consensus on this issue. Far from it. In fact, Shia politicians told people privately that they only voted yes in that vote because they were threatened.
Well, give us a sense, because you know the region so well. If, in fact, the United States did withdraw, because President Trump in the past has said things that would indicate he's inclined in that direction. If we withdrew, would Iraq basically come under the effective dominion of Iran because of the majority Shia within Iraq? And what would that do to the respective roles in the region of Iran on the one hand and the United States on the other?
No, I think it's important to distinguish between demographics and what I would call one of the most terrible legacies of Qasem Soleimani, which are these militias, which are both at once part of the government and yet stand aside or respond to forces outside the government, to sort of a dual key chain of command. And those leaders, some of them at least, including Abu Mahdi al-Mohandas, Khattab Hezbollah's commander, who was killed in that airstrike, that dual key arrangement means that those forces are not responsive to the state, in fact, threaten the state. It has nothing to do with the Shia demographics as such. And in fact, you'll find that the protests that have really electrified Iraq since October 1st have been almost entirely in the south of Iraq and Baghdad, in the Shia heartland. And those demonstrators have called on Iraq to essentially get its hand out of Iraqi affairs.
Well, see, this is fascinating point, terribly important that we, from the outside, not understanding it the way you do, have a tendency to think of Shia Iraqis as a monolith, which they are not. As you pointed out, there have been demonstrations. Before this all came along, there were demonstrations, often really involving the Shia Iraqis, saying we don't want Iran to have that much of a say. What are the odds that this might get turned around because of this attack?
Well, no, I think in the immediate terms, the protesters remained under huge pressure, as they were before, in no small part because, again, of Qasem Soleimani's role and the role that he exercised in Iraqi affairs through these militias. So these militias, with his encouragement, his pressure, were targeting those same demonstrators well before Qasem Soleimani's death. This will continue.
Madam Ambassador, what do you think that the United States could do to sort of shore up our relations with Iraq? I'm going to assume that that's strategically in our interest, that we don't want to create a vacuum there for Iran to move in. If that's in our strategic interest, what can we do? Or, in fact, if we do more, does it actually work against our interest because it looks like we're intervening?
No, I think there are a number of tools that we have to exercise. One of the most important things right now, and I say this understanding that this is actually fairly hard for any administration to manage, but it seems particularly challenging for this administration. It's message discipline. Sometimes it makes more sense to be strategically silent, or say less is more. But in this case, I think the messaging component is that we are there in a political sense for an enduring relationship, and for a relationship with Iraq that is premised on Iraq's sovereignty, stability, security. I do think, I'm convinced that the majority of Iraqis well understand that there's a great difference between the way that the U.S. today approaches Iraq and Iraq's internal affairs versus the way Iran has exercised its influence and sometimes its control for the past 15 or 16 years.
Ambassador, from what
I think it's important to keep the military relationship intact to the degree possible.
And finally, Madam Ambassador, on this specific subject, from what you know of what's going on right now, is Iran increasing its attempts to influence Iraq, even as we speak, in the wake of this attack?
Yes, so that's part of what the political theater on Sunday was all about. And I do think that people like Hadi al-Amri and other militia leaders who are also members of government will look to offer what we call in the U.S. government a deliverable in the wake of Qasem Soleimani's death, which is to drive U.S. forces out of Iraq. I think that will be they'll continue to make a hard push. Whether they're successful, Really difficult to say right now, but even odds. It depends on how the administration handles it as well, obviously.
All right, many thanks to former U.S. Ambassador to the UAE, Barbara Leaf, and I'm delighted to say we're going to have more with the ambassador coming up next. We're going to talk about what the vantage point is from Iran as well as from our other allies in the region. Live from New York, this is Balance of Power on television, Bloomberg Television, and on radio.
We live in an era where research, production...
Rainy, 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 rainy. Sergey, why are you in such good mood? It's raining. And rain means we take meal pups to cinema. And cinema means they'll be entertained. And entertained means they're also quiet for a couple of hours. Oh, let's go. Enjoy 2-for-1 cinema tickets for Meerkat movies when you buy through Compare the Market. Qualifying purchases, Tuesdays or Wednesdays, participating cinemas, 2 standard tickets only, cheapest ticket free, T's and C's apply.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Hand off Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today. Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game.
Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slammed it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three, it's up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Really astonishing attack on September 14th on Saudi Arabia's oil industry. Leaving aside, or let's not leave aside the attack on the U.S. drone. So deterrence might have been reinforced or reestablished over the spring and summer. I think this will have a quenching effect on the one hand. On the other hand, he's too potent and visible a figure, somebody who was quite dear to the supreme leader, and he was, of course, the architect and the executor of Iran's forward defense or regional strategy. So I think it will be hard for the regime not to respond, but they will do it carefully, methodically. They won't do it immediately. And as I said, I think they will look for semi-deniable attacks on our Gulf partners in particular.
And finally, Madam Ambassador, what does it look like from the point of view of some of our friends in the region, such as the Gulf states, such as the United Arab Emirates, where you served as ambassador, such as Saudi Arabia? They're much closer to Tehran and Iran and might be in the first line of attack.
That's right. And I think they feel extraordinarily vulnerable. They have felt so all along, but in particular since these attacks began in May. And with that attack on Abqaiq on September 14th, it was a stunning display, and a display not only a sort of a brilliantly creative attack from out of the blue, but it was unprecedented in terms of the strategic nature of it. So that had a really chilling effect on our partners.
Okay, thank you so very much, Madam Ambassador. That is former U.S. Ambassador to the UAE, Barbara Leaf, reporting from Washington today. Coming up, Greek Prime Minister Mitsotakis will be arriving shortly at the White House for meetings with President Trump. We're joined by former Greek Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis to discuss what's on that agenda. That's coming up next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Financial leaders enjoy talking with Tom Keene and Jonathan Darrow.
What was it like having the giant darken the door every once in a while?
Experts appreciate it when what they have to say is understood.
Do you think that we might have seen a cyclical peak in the labour market?
It's the same reason we're recommending Bloomberg Surveillance to you.
Everything you thought would happen is happening.
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You're fierce. You take care of business and don't hold back. Taking care of your health shouldn't be any different. You know when something's off. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, and rashes. Listen to your body. It could be lupus. We're here to help you take control. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Greek Prime Minister Mitsotakis will be meeting with President Trump at the White House shortly as he conducts a U.S. visit focused in large part on promoting U.S. business investment in his country as it works to overcome the financial crisis of a few years ago. Welcome now one of those who tried to engineer a way out of that crisis. He is Yanis Varoufakis, who served as Greece's finance minister in 2015. Since then, Mr. Varoufakis founded a new political party, the Mera 25. If I'm pronouncing it right, he'll correct me, returning him to Parliament last year. He comes to us today from Athens for today's conversation in chief. So first and most important, how do I pronounce the name of your party, sir?
Mera. Mera stands for diem or day, as in carpe diem. Seize the day.
Mera 25. Okay, great to have you with us. So let's start with what you understand to be on the agenda from your Prime Minister Mitsotakis as he meets with President Trump this afternoon. What does he want from President Trump?
Well, Mr. Mitsotakis is a new Prime Minister. He was only elected last July. But this is a continuity administration. The previous left-wing administration under Mr. Tsipras, my former colleague, did precisely the same thing. He visited Washington, D.C., he visited the White House, he met with Donald Trump, he signed an agreement with Mr. Netanyahu, Israel's Prime Minister, ExxonMobil, and various other multinationals for effectively sharing the Eastern Mediterranean with Israel and Cyprus for whatever that is worth. And Mr. Mitsotakis is a continuity Prime Minister, so he's in Washington, D.C. to cement that deal, a deal which, from my perspective, the perspective of the opposition here in Greece, is not worth the paper it's written on, and it's actually quite dangerous. But of course, I'm not an impartial spectator, given that I confront Mr. Mitsotakis on the floor of Greece's parliament on a weekly basis.
But you're honest about that, for which you deserve credit. But give us a sense of what Greece does need right now, particularly from the United States or from other countries. What would help it with its economic situation?
Well, actually, you see, this is my great disagreement with both Mr. Mitsotakis and his predecessor. I don't think we need anything from the United States, other than to be left alone, not to be implicated in any generalized conflict in the Middle and the Near East. What we do need is an escape from debt bondage, because we remain in a situation where we're hugely indebted to the European Union, and in particular to the bailout fund, which is significant because when you're pretending to be repaying a debt to the European Union that is not payable, the way to pretend that you're repaying it is to have targets of a budget surplus that is tantamount to punitive taxation of the private sector. So what we need is an escape from debt bondage vis-à-vis the European Union. There's not much that the United States can do, because, let's face it, why would American business come to invest for the long term in Greece when they have to pay ridiculous tax rates in an economy where aggregate demand is squashed, is completely crushed by permanent austerity?
So you are obviously very well identified, going back to 2015, with that point of view that says we really need some debt relief here. We have to get the principal down. We can't just extend the maturities, essentially, because we won't be able to catch up with it. Typically, there is an alternative of growing your way out of a problem with that. Is that possible in Greece? Can you grow your economy fast enough to really pay down that debt?
Oh, yes, of course we can. Of course we can. Greece is like a spring that has been compressed and is ready to be released. But to be released, we need to end the permanent pretense that we can repay a debt that we cannot repay. Both the private sector and the state sector. Let me give you an example. Our banking system. It is immersed in non-performing loans to the tune of 40% of their asset book. Now, you know what this means. A bank that has 40% of its asset book in the red can simply not act as a bank. Similarly, the state sector. We are contracted with the European Union to run a permanent surplus until 2060. No economy, no macroeconomy can manage to grow out of its woes when it is contracted until 2060 to run a permanent surplus. The United States couldn't do it. Japan couldn't do it. No one could do it. But of course we need to grow out as long as we are allowed degrees of freedom that will allow for a significant reduction in tax rates and the end of the permanent austerity. That is the other side, the flip side of the coin of insolvency.
So, as I say, at least I recall back in 2015, we had a similar sort of discussion, and there were certain people who really said, we're not going to really renegotiate the principle at all. Is there any progress being made in that dynamic, or are we exactly where we were 4 or 5 years ago?
We're exactly where we were. Of course, the difference is because, 5 years have gone by, the insolvency is getting deeper, and our creditors who are refusing to renegotiate a debtor structure have had to, these are the laws of economic and financial gravity, they've had to extend and pretend the loans. They had to keep pushing our repayments further and further into the future. And that is detrimental to the interests both of the European taxpayers, who are bearing the weight of lending Greece, and of course the Greek economy. But what I think is very interesting, and I think it would be of interest to our viewers, is the great Greek paradox, as I call it. While the Greek economy is becoming more insolvent every day, those who trade in Greek bonds and in Greek NPLs are actually making a mint. And the reason, of course, is because of this official sector involvement in Greece's affairs. The fact that effectively most of the debt has been shifted out of the markets. 90% of Greece's debt is not being traded. So whatever few bonds the government issues, just because they have the backing of the European Central Bank, sell like hotcakes. So if you buy Greek debt, if you bought Greek debt in the last 2 years, you've done wonderfully well. So the numbers prosper. The investors in Greek debt, private and public, prosper because they buy non-performing loans at the tune of 8% of face value. Can you imagine? You buy a mortgage at 8% of its face value. It's very difficult to lose money if you do that. But of course, the way you gain money is by, foreclosing on people, auctioning off their homes. So the local economy suffers, the numbers prosper, and the investors make a mint.
Finally, talking once again about the United States meetings with Donald Trump and the Prime Minister today, one of the issues is oil and gas exploration, particularly off Turkey's coast and around Cyprus and things like that. Are you concerned, as apparently some are, with Turkey really impinging upon Greece's ability to exploit oil and natural gas?
Oh, I'm concerned hugely and at different levels. One is the geopolitical level that you alluded to. We have a Turkish regime that is very keen to take advantage of any opportunity to increase the tensions in the region, because this is how Mr. Erdogan's government is stabilized, by creating tensions on its borders. Secondly, I'm very concerned that the alliance with Israel's Netanyahu and with the Cypriot Republic, which is, of course, constantly in a crisis because of the division on the island. This is creating broader conflicts in the Eastern Mediterranean. And finally, we don't need that oil and gas. It's too expensive to extract. We should be moving towards renewables.
Okay, thank you so much to Yanis Varoufakis, the former Greek finance minister. We're going to have more with him coming up on Bloomberg Radio at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And don't forget, Bloomberg Wall Street Week premieres on Friday on Bloomberg Television and Radio at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. If you're one of the 4.7 billion people expected to travel this year, you might want to look west. The world's safest and most punctual airlines are in the Asia-Pacific region. Qantas Airways was named safest airline in the world by AirlineRatings.com, followed by Air New Zealand and Taiwan's Ava Airways. In a separate survey by OAG Aviation Worldwide, PT Garuda Indonesia was crowned 2019's most punctual carrier. Peering into her crystal glass, Bloomberg's wine critic Ellen McCoy sees big things to come for wine in 2020. Global warming and experiments with new grapes will be of top importance, while the fruits of a one-year mission to age wine in space will finally be tasted. Unfussy Piquette, a low-cost, low-alcohol, slightly fizzy beverage made from fermenting the leftover skins, seeds, and stems of grapes, will come into vogue, as will so-called health-focused wines. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
When you put together the puzzle that's today's business and political environment,
can you make a call given this swirl of data?
Is that already being reflected in the way that they're priced?
Make sure you have all the pieces.
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction. Will he have to abide by a subpoena?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SCI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks continue to trade mixed. Investors wary of an escalation in tensions with Iran. The dollar advanced. Oil continues its retreat from multi-month highs. West Texas Intermediate crude dropping 1.4%, 62.36 a barrel. Brent also retreating, down 1.5% right now, 67.87 a barrel. S&P down 8. That's a drop of 0.2%. The Dow average down 113 points, down 0.4%, while NASDAQ is up 10. That's a gain of just about 0.1%. 10-year down 1/32. The yield now 1.81%. Gold continues to push higher, up again today, up 0.4%, 15.71 the ounce, higher by $6.14. Iran says it's evaluating 13 possible ways to inflict, quote, a historic nightmare on the U.S. for killing a powerful Iranian general last week. Art Hogan is chief market strategist at National Holdings.
The worst thing that's going to happen if one of these 13 scenarios is going to be historic and very bad for America would be some disruption of supply of oil. And if we had a sustained higher price per barrel of oil, sustained at the sort of $70 to $80 level for a period of time. But we're relatively energy independent in the United States and a consumer-driven economy. So we'd be concerned about higher energy affecting the consumer, but not at 60 to 70. It's at 70 to 80.
And right now we've got West Texas Intermediate, as I mentioned, 62.41 a barrel. So the S&P 500 index heading for its second drop in 3 sessions, down now by 7, down 0.2%. 102 on Wall Street. Time now for the Market Drivers Report with a focus on American depository receipts. And here is Dave Wilson.
Thanks, Charlie. ADRs are falling along with U.S. shares. The S&P ADR index is down 0.2%. The S&P 500 is also down 0.2%. The UK's Rentokil Initial has lost 2.2% in U.S. trading. The pest control company was lowered to neutral from the equivalent of buy at Credit Suisse. The firm cited concern about Rentokil's North American profitability as well as currency swings. Another UK company, Aston Martin, has dropped almost 17%. The luxury car maker said earnings fell about 45% in its first full year as a public company. Aston Martin also said last month's sales and profit margins slid as selling costs climbed. Now, chip makers' ADRs are higher after preliminary sales at U.S.-based Microchip Technology beat analysts' average estimate in the Bloomberg survey. Germany's Infineon Technologies has risen 4.6%. Taiwan's TSMC has gained 2%, and Himax Technologies has jumped almost 14%. And the Philippines' PLDT has risen 3%. Holding company JG Summit increased its stake in the phone company to 11.2%. And PLDT was lifted to neutral at Bank of America and Citigroup. Both firms had recommended selling the stock, Charlie.
And we thank you very much, Dave Wilson, keeping track of those American depository receipts. So again, recapping, mixed day on Wall Street here. The Dow, the S&P lower, NASDAQ advancing, S&P down 0.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's the Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power.
We have the strongest economy by far in the world.
We're going to grow our trade relationship.
I know what's broken. I know how to fix it.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
They've got the money they need to run a very competitive race.
We've got now a real crunch few days for Brexit.
We want certainty in the markets. We want certainty in our trading relationships.
The administration is trying to create a new divided world.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Bloomberg Radio.
The U.S. adds to the confusion in Iraq with a draft letter pointing toward pulling out. Joe Biden makes a push in Iowa with less than 30 days until the caucuses, and European core inflation remains stubbornly fixed at 1.3%. From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, welcome to the second hour of Balance of Power. The new European Central Bank head, Christine Lagarde, is launching a review of why there's so little price pressure in Europe. And today's numbers indicate she may need it, as Eurozone inflation remains at 1.3% despite all the accommodative monetary policy. Still with us is Yanis Varoufakis, former Greek finance minister. Thanks so much for staying with us, Mr. Minister. We talked in the first hour about what was going on with Greece and the need to really address the underlying principle of the debt. It's insolvent. What about Europe more broadly? What's needed in Europe more broadly to get growth going?
Investment. Just investment. We have the lowest level of investment in relation as a proportion of the available liquidity that has been pumped out by the European Central Bank, as well as savings accumulating as a result of the European Union's and the Eurozone's in particular trade surplus, current account surplus, in the history of post-war Europe. That, I think, says it all. The fact that the European Central Bank has been pumping money out does not necessarily translate into investment, into fixed capital, into good quality jobs, into the green transition that we need, given that Germany is still burning lignite, for God's sakes. So I think that's the answer to your question, and the European Central Bank cannot do this on its own.
So what is between, on the one hand, the large savings, which typically you think goes into investment, you have productivity, and the productivity that you need? I mean, why aren't people investing it in more productive use of the assets?
They would like to, but you know what the investment game is like. It's like a beauty contest. It's not a question of whether you want to invest. It's a question of whether you think that aggregate investment is going to be sufficiently high for aggregate demand to rise so that your individual investment becomes profitable. So if every investor or the majority of investors are caught up in pessimistic expectations that others will invest like them, then they will not invest, and the aggregate investment numbers will be low, and then they will feel that they were right to be pessimistic, and that is self-perpetuating. And the problem with monetary policy, even exceptionally loose monetary policy as we've had in the last 8 years or so, is that it doesn't address this problem. Because if you're an investor and you're tossing and turning at night in bed thinking, should I invest or not, in a new factory, in a new production line, and you hear that negative rates will be pushed further into negative territory, what are you going to think? Oh, this is going to be great because funding is going to be cheaper, or will you think, and I think that's what you will think, oh my God, for Christine Lagarde and the European Central Bank to be pushing interest rates below minus 0.3%, things must not be good, and therefore I'm not going to invest. So unlike the farmer's market, where a reduction of the price of potatoes clears excess supply in potatoes, investment funding is not cleared when its price, the interest rate, goes into negative territory.
What role, if any, do demographics play in this? That is to say, there's a perception that there will not be growing demand because there won't be more people.
I think that is just a poor excuse by those who have failed to shift, to push up the rates of investment. The demographic problem of Europe is a decade-old problem. The investment problem is a very recent one. The European economy has not managed to recover the rates of investment that it had before 2010. And that is because of very poor fiscal policy and of a monetary policy that is constrained by constraints that the Fed doesn't face. It's an institutional failure that is blamed on the demography.
What hopes do you place in the green effort? You referred to it earlier, and we now have a new head of the European Commission coming in saying this is a big priority. We had Angela Merkel at the New Year's address saying this is really a priority for Germany. Do you have hopes that might change some of what you're talking about? There would be substantial investment and therefore fiscal stimulus in a green initiative.
This is precisely what we need. if you look at Europe, we're very far behind both the United States and China when it comes to battery technology, which is going to be the technology of the future of the automobile industry. We are very far behind Japan, China, not America, but Japan and China regarding railways. We're very far behind green energy, renewables, with very few exceptions like Denmark and maybe the United Kingdom. And that's where we need the investment to go. So when I heard the European Commission advocate a Green Deal, I thought, my goodness, something is happening here that is worth smiling about. But then when you look at the detail, you realize that the European Union is at it again, coming up with wonderful concepts and labels in order to hide the fact that the substance is not there. And why am I saying this? Because the money is not there. They're talking about shifting existing resources from other accounts to a green account, which is not a bad thing per se, but that is not going to lift aggregate investment overall.
You're an economist, but you also are a politician. You're a member of the parliament now in Greece. Do you see hope on the horizon in leadership? Because what you're describing really requires leadership fundamentally. Are there leaders coming along whom you think could really take the reins and move this forward in a positive direction?
I can't say that I'm optimistic. I'm forever hopeful. I make this distinction, this strategic distinction between hope and optimism. Optimism is a very poor cousin of hope. I don't see it. If you look at Germany, for instance, it is politically moribund. There is no one to succeed Angela Merkel. Angela Merkel was a tremendous politician, whether one agreed with her or not. There is no one in the Christian Democratic Party that is capable of following on her footsteps and correcting her mistakes. The Social Democrats are in freefall. The Green Party is boxed in between the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats, and they are too scared that they will be accused of being fiscally profligate by the conservative ordo-liberal economists that are running the commentariat in Germany. In France, you have a politician that showed immense promise. Yes. He has been totally betrayed by the German political establishment.
Yeah, having a tough time, I think it's fair to say. Many thanks to Yanis Varoufakis. He's founder of the Greek Mera 25 party, as well as former finance minister of Greece. Former Vice President Joe Biden, in the meantime, is staging something of a turnaround in Iowa. Ryan Teague Beckwith is here to take us through what may have turned things around. That's coming up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
You're not supposed to begin the race before the starting gun, but this is a different kind of race.
Let's go live to London and get the very latest.
Karen Moscow.
Airlines could soon be under pressure.
Nathan Hager.
Apple has reversed course on Hong Kong.
Business news, interviews, and analysis first.
We get another key reading on inflation.
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey, because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in...
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket.
And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
When it comes to music, I've heard it all. Pink Floyd, Sean Paul, Slipknot. But in the Witch Test Lab, hearing isn't enough. When we test headphones, we really listen. Not just to the music, but to the stuff that gets in the way. The traffic, the chatter, all that. Mind the gap. We simulate the loudest commute to find you the headphones that cancel out the noise. So you know we're only recommending the best.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and tune in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. At Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A move lower for the Dow and the S&P. NASDAQ continuing to advance, but the S&P on track for its second drop in 3 sessions. Investors cautious after Iran threatened a military response to that American airstrike that killed a top general 4 days ago. Right now, S&P down 6, lower by 0.2%. The Dow down 99 points, down 0.4, while NASDAQ is up 16 points, higher by 0.2%. Chip makers helping lead the advance today. We've got NVIDIA, for example, up by 1.8%. 10-year down 2/30 seconds, yield 1.81%. Gold up 0.4%. Gold higher by 5.77 the ounce. Right now, gold is at $15.71.99. West Texas Intermediate crude pulling back, down 1.1%, 62.55 a barrel. Brent 68.06, lower by 1.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thanks so much to Charlie Pellet. From the Interactive Broker Studio, this is Balance of Power. With less than a month to go until the Iowa caucuses, the latest CBS poll shows Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Pete Buttigieg in a dead heat, which is something of a turnaround for former Vice President Biden, who had been seen as struggling in Iowa. Though, to be fair, the former Vice President has been saying he's the one to watch because President Trump is watching him.
Have you ever heard of anybody, any sitting president, trying to determine a year before the election, or even more than that, or 6 months before a primary at the time, or a caucus, who his Democratic opponent will be? Well, it tells me that he may not like me to be his opponent.
To take us through what's happening on the ground in Iowa, welcome now Bloomberg national political reporter Ryan Teague Beckwith. So, am I right, Ryan, that this is a bit of a turnaround for the former vice president? It wasn't that long ago they thought he was really sort of fading.
He was lagging in Iowa in the fall, and that was around the same time that Warren was starting to go up a little bit. They've now reversed positions. She's kind of down, and he's a little bit up. The big picture here is that they're all kind of bunched together there, and it really is a jump ball. This could go any direction. He is doing better at the moment, but that means that there's also going to be more pressure on him to maintain that and do well a month from now when the caucuses happen.
Does he have some momentum as far as we can tell? And if he does, what does it come from? He had that bus tour that I know that he thinks was pretty effective. He's also got a couple of really important, I guess, endorsements from Iowan congresspeople.
Yeah, Representative Abby Finkenauer, who's a particularly good endorsement for him. That helps expand his reach, obviously, going into those rural areas, which is what Amy Klobuchar has been doing as well. Helps him to persuade some people that he thinks are particularly open to his message and to him as a candidate. I don't really believe in momentum, and I don't think that this particular election cycle shows momentum existing. We kind of came into 2020 pretty much exactly the same place that the polls were at coming into 2019, and I sort of felt like, gosh, I wrote all those stories for nothing.
That's right. There have been some ups and downs in the meantime, but we came out where we went in. Well, okay, fair enough. You don't believe in momentum. Do you believe in presence? Because there was also criticism of the vice president back in the fall that he just wasn't spending much time in Iowa, and now it appears he's almost living there.
Yeah, he's definitely spending a lot more time there than he was in the past, and he was criticized for that. I think that the time that you spend there is beneficial, but I think that the time you spend there right now is going to be the most beneficial.
So who else is spending time there, and who else is really showing some strength? I mean, Pete Buttigieg, by all accounts, has a very strong ground game, right?
Yeah, I mean, we really won't know how good these ground games are until the night of the caucuses. It is so hard to predict. And the polls are useful for giving you kind of a big picture, but you also have to keep in mind that there's things like this 15% viability. So if they show up at a caucus place and they say, I love Buttigieg, but only 13% of the people in the room support him, then they have to find another candidate to back. And so there's a lot of complicated variables here that you have to keep in mind that make it really hard to predict, especially with four candidates bunched up like that.
We've got another debate coming up here. How important are those debates or not? And I'm mindful of the fact that it feels like almost every debate people come out and say, boy, Amy Klobuchar has really done well in the debate, and yet her numbers tend not to move very much.
Yeah, and again, the thing in something like Iowa is that if she came in fourth place or something like that, then that would be all we would be talking about. If she comes in third place or something like that and manages to knock one of the top people out. So that it's not just who wins, numerically speaking, but who beats expectations. She's done better on in some of the debates. I think those are helpful more for the people who people don't know. Buttigieg, in particular, did well in these forums kind of early on and doing these long interviews because people didn't know anything about him, and so that was a way for them to be introduced. I don't think it helps Biden or Warren or even Sanders much because we all kind of know their shtick. They're fairly recognizable. It's not going to change anyone's mind to see Joe Biden talk for an hour. They've seen him do that before.
So the dirty little secret here, I think, is there actually aren't that many delegates that come out of Iowa, but typically Iowa is really important. It's the first, but also it's thought it'll be sort of momentum, a word you don't care for, but a way to get funds to raise and things like that. Given the fundraising, is that an issue this year? Because the fundraising numbers have been really, really stunning.
So the fundraising is kind of in a whole new paradigm. In the old days, when all of the candidates were following the Buttigieg model of going to a wine cave and getting, $2,800 checks, from a select group of donors, if you didn't do well in the early state, then the donors go, I'm throwing good money after bad, and also you tapped them out. So it got harder to keep raising money. People want to bet on a winning horse. And so that tended to winnow the field. Now that people are using things like ActBlue to give small dollar donations, well, if you've given, even $100 in $20 increments to Bernie Sanders, you still got another $2,700 to go. And so you can keep giving. And a lot of those people, they're not giving because they're trying to back a winner. They're giving because they want to represent their viewpoint. They want someone that they back, and they want Bernie Sanders to stick around. So there's really not the incentive for someone like a Bernie Sanders to drop out. It would be fatal to Buttigieg if he doesn't do well.
So finally, Ryan, we try not to be in the prediction game, but all the factors we just talked about might indicate this might go quite a while. We may go well past Super Tuesday and all those things. We may go into May, even June.
So I've been talking with some people about that exact question and trying to get at it. Now, there is some research that says that races with really a large number of candidates actually end faster.
Oh, there you go. Well, there's some hope. That's good. Okay. Many thanks to Bloomberg's Ryan Teague Beckwith. Will the Supreme Court take up the challenge to Obamacare this term, adding to what is already a crowded docket? We talk with Professor Timothy Jost of the Washington and Lee Law School about that question. That's coming up. That's going to be on Balance of Power, and we are on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The U.S. economy appears to be in good shape. The trade deficit shrank thanks in part to the trade war. Imports were down while exports of grains especially were higher. The country's services industry got a big boost in December thanks to those record Christmas sales. Home prices up again in November, 3.7% as a national average. But in Idaho, prices spiked 10%. There's a downside to the economy, too. Hallmark is cutting 400 jobs because it says the way people shop has changed. And Pier 1 is closing half its stores, laying off an unspecified number of workers because sales keep falling. Pier 1 is the first major retailer this year to announce store closings. On Wall Street, stocks are lower as investors try to gauge the possible impact of the Iranian conflict. The Dow is down 0.33%, the S&P down 0.25%, but the Nasdaq is up just about 0.1%. As of today, Uber now supplies riders with a PIN code so they know they're getting into the right car. I'm Chuck Kamlick, Bloomberg Radio.
My name is Hunter Hayes. I know myself, and I know my buzzed warning signs. One shot is about knowing my limits, or not necessarily knowing my limits.
I start with one shot to have a good time.
One of the signs that I'm starting to feel a little buzz is when I start solving not only my own problems, but the entire world's problems. When I know I'm going out, I know I'm going to start with calling for a ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Are you interested in...
Do you go on the same holiday every year? To the same country, in the same hotel, with the same sea view, visit the same ancient monuments, lay by the same dolphin-shaped pool, meet the same Barrys and Sandras, and wear the same Hawaiian shirt that you'd never wear at home? Then maybe it's time to switch it up, starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Peoples of London, are you like Sergey, working your balls off from 9 to 5, then cooking for whole family? Well, I, Alexander, have taken responsibility for tonight's splendid evening meal.
Ooh, let me guess, Meerkat Meals?
Of course, you know how I roll. Get 2 for 1 on food with Meerkat Meals at your local favorites, like the Crooked Well, when you buy through Compare the Market.
Qualifying purchase, app only, 2 for 1 on selected food, participating restaurants, a la carte only, Sunday to Thursday, T's and C's and exclusions apply.
Heading for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Get your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three, it's up and in!
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff. You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, does the Supreme Court have room on its crowded docket for another major case? We're joined by my colleague June Grasso to talk about the request for expedited review of the Obamacare challenge. But first, let's get a market check with Charlie Pellet.
Thank you very much, David Weston. We are lower across the board with the Dow, the S&P both declining. S&P on track for its second drop in 3 sessions. Investors do remain cautious after Iran threatened a military response to that American airstrike that killed a top general 4 days ago. Chip makers, though, lifting NASDAQ, pushing the NASDAQ 100 index higher. Right now, we've got the Dow down 99 points, down 0.4. S&P down 6, down 0.2. NASDAQ up by 0.2%. The trade deficit narrowed in November. And with that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
America's trade deficit in goods and services narrowed in November to $43.1 billion, the smallest in 3 years. Exports advanced, perhaps a function of a let-up in the White House trade war with China. Imports declined, with the merchandise trade deficit with China narrowing to a 6-year low. It all suggests trade could boost fourth-quarter GDP after weighing on economic growth during the second and third quarters. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
A study of more than 250,000 women found that those who use talc or other personal hygiene powders were not significantly more likely to develop ovarian cancer. News that impacts thousands of legal claims against drug maker Johnson & Johnson over its products. Johnson & Johnson shares, they're up now by 0.1%. S&P, as we mentioned, down 5, down 0.2. The 10-year down 3/32 yield, 1.82%. Gold advancing again today, up another 0.4%, $15.71 the ounce there. And West Texas Intermediate crude oil down 1.1%, $62.58 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power continues. Once again, here is your host, David Weston.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. Late last year, the Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit affirmed a decision striking down the individual mandate in the Affordable Care Act, but it declined to strike down the statute in its entirety. Now, a group of Democrat-led states and the House of Representatives are asking the Supreme Court to review the case before this term is over. To take us through what's involved, we welcome now my colleague, June Grasso, and Timothy Jost. He's Professor Emeritus of the Washington and Lee Law School.